emotions, right? That's what drives us, that's what moves us. So we need the emotions, because otherwise, well, life sucks. I mean, how I see it is life will direct us there. We will get there if we just try to listen, and yeah, I think things will happen in a way that will lead you in a certain direction, and things will happen that maybe in the moment they don't make a lot of sense, or you don't see why something's happening, but maybe at some point when we look back, we will recognize a couple of, incidents that led us in a certain direction, and that turned out to be really valuable.
Which I wanted to get your perspective on that. What have you learned about anxiety from Stoicism?
Well, yeah, that many of the things that we fear will never really happen, right? And so it holds us back in the present moment, where nothing is to be feared, really. So it holds us back, and we cannot really live.
And you've said it a couple of times now, but that word balance, I think that's the key in all of this. What originally drew you into Stoicism?
Well, I was reading countless books, and first I think I stumbled upon it in Happiness Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt, but at that time I didn't really notice it tremendously. So it was only maybe a year or two later when I read Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way, when I really, got interested in Stoicism, and then I decided to read more about it, and I got hooked because it spoke to me. I think it resonated on many levels, and I thought it's fascinating, and really I could also, see myself already practicing a couple of its ideas, and I wanted to learn more, and so yeah. I came to Stoicism thanks to reading books, yeah.
So in what ways specifically do you think it resonated with you early on?
So it's a virtue-based philosophy, right? So for some reason I've always had this ideas with me that it's, for example, it's important and it's right to speak the truth, for example, and not lie, and to do what's right, in general. So that living your own truth and living according to certain virtues for the Stoics is enough to get to the good life. And I think that resonated highly with me, that it matters what you do with any given situation and not the situation itself. So that's one aspect, is these virtues, or trying to express your best self in every moment. And another aspect, I think, was that Stoicism somehow gave me this image of being a really calm human being. So despite the stormy seas, maybe you can still be calm and act according to your highest self, no matter the challenges. And I think that's something that really spoke to me, this calmness. So
with that perspective of remaining calm in different situations, I think there's two different perspectives and point of views about that, because you can say, hey, when bad things happen, I'm going to remain calm and can control what I can control. And on the other side, people might see that as you just being someone being completely unemotional and just not caring. So how do you find the difference between the two, and how would you explain that to someone who is maybe not familiar with Stoicism?
So this idea of being unemotional, that is to some people thought to be from, or classic to Stoic philosophy. I see it differently. I get it, because the Stoics kind of put reason on a throne a little bit. So they put reason a bit higher than, the passions. And I would say it's smarter to put them on level, to have a healthy balance. So I get it that they put reason up really high. But maybe they were living in different times, right? Where it was, I don't know, maybe they had, tyrants that, had people killed due to their passions. So they were living in different times, so probably they had their reasons to put reason up on a throne. I think nowadays we don't want to go this far. I think it's good to be reasonable. It's good to think things through, but you don't want to be unemotional. And if we think about this idea of being unemotional like a stone, I mean, who wants to be like this, really? So when I speak about being calm despite the challenges in life, I don't mean not feeling anything. I think that's part of what makes us human, really. We need emotions, right? That's what drives us, that's what moves us. So we need the emotions, because otherwise, well, life sucks. I mean, if you wouldn't feel anything, if you wouldn't care about anything, then where's the sense in that, really? There's no sense if you don't have these feelings and you don't care about anything. Life is not worth living, I find. So, and there's no art in that, to be calm when you don't feel anything. It's no challenge. It's nothing, really. I think that the art is to remain calm and compassionate and tolerant, maybe, and respectful, despite feeling these waves going on within. And here it's not about suppressing these emotions, but it's about regulating them. It's like, taming them. In the book I have this the image of taming the wild wolf within. So it's not about suppressing emotions. It's about, being free in a way with the emotions, but still behaving in ways that you could speak of with honor. So we don't want to feel the emotions or let the emotions take us over. So we get so angry, for example, and we hit our beloved child, something we never would want to do if we were really present in the moment, right? So if the emotions take over and let us do things we don't really want to do or say, then we might want to work on regulating these emotions and mastering them in a way that we can, still feel them, because we want to feel. It's beautiful. It's, I often say even sadness. Sadness is so sad, but when I feel it, I'm glad I can feel this. I'm grateful for this feeling, because if I can be really present with the sadness, it's a new kind of experience, right? And it's beautiful in its own way that I can feel so strongly about something. So we want to feel the emotions and have them here, but stay centered, keep our energy, so that we can still act in a way that's true to ourselves.
So two things I want to touch on there. The first one being present, living in the moment. Why is that so important in your life and from what you've seen from the Stoics?
Well, you don't really have access to yourself if you're not present, and you will end up doing things that you don't really want to do. I find that it's when I'm lost somewhere else, when I'm not here, when I'm not present, I might do things that, I don't really want to do. I might say things that are mean, which is not really true to myself, I find. So, and since Stoicism is a philosophy about conscious behavior, I find that where you want to express your highest self in every moment, so you may flourish, right? That's their goal, to flourish with by expressing your highest self in every moment. And if we don't have access to ourselves in the present moment, we often, or I find at least, I fall down, below my highest self, in old behavior patterns, for example, in family, I can observe this often, so I grew up with 3 brothers, so we're 4 brothers, and it's great to grow up with brothers, and they're my best friends, and we love each other, and we all have really good relationships. But sometimes I can observe myself falling back into old behavior patterns with my younger brother, for example. So when we grew up, I sometimes was mean or provoked him in a certain way, and I find it's no longer the way to be for me and not for him. So I can observe this, that I sometimes, when I'm not really here, I fall back into old behavior patterns, and that's true especially for these old relationships. And yeah, so when I'm not present, it's really hard to live according to my truths sometimes.
When it comes to living in the present, something I continually find that I tell myself is control the controllables. Can't control other people, can't control what happens to you. You can control how you respond to it and what you do going forward. So continual reminders that I try and do, even though it's tough sometimes. But having that on the back of my mind has definitely helped me a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's classic Stoicism that you're practicing there and applying there to your own life. So that's really good. Yeah, control the controllables and focus on what you can do. Focus on your roles, and that's a great way to go. Yeah, but again, you need a certain presence, right? So the challenge is to remain present, and I think it just takes practice. Lots of practice.
And the part about the Stoics having reasoning above passions, for example, and when it comes to, let's say today, with people being too logical, how does reason and logic, how do these things take a higher point in the hierarchy in our lives? Like, why has that happened, and why is it a bad thing?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say it's still so today. I would say it's so in many people, that they are, more the rational ones, the ones who put reason up really high and try to keep the passions low. But I also observe the opposite behavior, that we go in a direction where people, put the feelings and emotional part really high and say, I want just to do what I feel like doing, pretty much. So I would say neither way is a really good way to go. I find that we want to have really a healthy balance, so we can flourish in life. Because how I see it, I use this metaphor for myself. So I'm a rider on a whale. Now, bear with me. So the rider is the rational agent, the reason, and the whale is the emotional part. And the whale, I use the whale because it's below the surface. It's subconscious, and reason is more conscious. So basically, it's conscious part, the rider, and the subconscious part, the whale. And in this metaphor, the whale, the emotional part, the subconscious part, is much bigger and much stronger. And I think in life it's this way, that sometimes we might think, because we heavily identify with the rider, with the reasonable part, we might see ourselves as a captain on a boat, steering and making all the decisions. But in reality, it's the whale that's below this imaginary boat that's making the decisions, with their subconscious desires and beliefs and fears and so on. So we have various parts within, but we are the whole thing. We are the rider and the whale, or we are we are reason and emotion, and we really want to find a healthy way to communicate between this more conscious part, reason, with the emotional part, with the subconscious part. And this isn't easy, right? Because the feelings, they don't come in clear words or sentences. It's only the reasonable part that can construct the language or use sentences, and the emotional part is much more subtle, and you might feel something, and maybe the heartbeat goes up, or you start sweating, or something. So I find that we want to learn to really have a good relationship between the two, so that reason, the writer, will understand the whale, and for behavior to become flowing and congruent with who we want to be. We want to communicate well with the whale and listen to our feelings, listen to the emotions. But we also don't want to have the whale take completely over, so we just will use the reason to explain basically our behavior that happened out of a lower part or another part. So I find today that we really have both, or I can observe both, that we have people who are really high on self-discipline, and maybe some of them don't listen well to their feelings, and they suppress them and keep them, chained in a dark cell somewhere and just try not to listen. But this is certainly not a healthy way. You might reach great success in some areas, but these people, sometimes they will get ill, or burn out, or just not be well. And the other extreme doesn't work either, because if we just do what's pleasurable and what we feel like, probably we don't end up doing much work, right? And not many things that require effort from our side. So that's the art, I find, to have a healthy relationship within, basically, and listen to the heart and have a good connection. I would say, for me, it's the higher self, right? You can say it's your soul or the divine part. That's also within Stoic philosophy, but you can just say it's your best self, or the connection to your intuition, or whatever you want to call it. But for me, it's also the connection to the divine, and that the subconscious, can perceive things we cannot perceive, just with the reason or with our senses even. It's a deeper sense that will perceive something that we don't really see or hear, but one part within knows something that you cannot really explain. Some inner intelligence that maybe I don't trust this man, or maybe I will do this, or I will do that. You know it, but you don't really know where this knowledge or where this comes from. And I would say that's the deeper part within, that we want to connect well, or I think we're connected already, but we want to learn to understand it better. Yeah.
And you've said it a couple of times now, but that word balance, I think that's the key in all of this. And even with the guys who, they're on the big self-improvement grind, and, it can be taken out of proportion when they have every hour of their day scheduled out for the whole day, from when they wake up, when they go to bed. And, that leads to burnout after a while. And then when it comes to having no schedule at all, having no upper aim that you are working towards, well, then you are just stuck in this mundane life and you have no direction. So finding the proper midway point, somewhere in between, whatever that looks like in the season of life you're in, that sounds like what's key to key in Stoicism and the key to achieving your goals.
Yeah, I'd say so. But again, it's the art then is to listen to this deeper wisdom within, to know in which direction you want to go. Because sometimes the question, what do I really want, is the hardest of them all, right? Because we, or many of us, are really free to do to go this way or that way in life, and we can choose maybe the professions where what we want to study or what we want to learn, and where we want to work. But really to know what is it that I want can be really tough. And but you know, I'm sure we're here. Everybody is here for some reason, and life. How I see it is, life will direct us there. We will get there if we just try to listen, and yeah, I think things will happen in a way that will lead you in a certain direction, and things will happen that maybe in the moment they don't make a lot of sense, or you don't see why something's happening, but maybe at some point when we look back, we will recognize a couple of incidents that led us in a certain direction, and that turned out to be really valuable. But only backwards we understand. While we live forward, it doesn't make sense at some stations in life maybe, but backwards we will understand and see that life guided or guides us to where we want to go.
Yeah, I see it as you can look back and see how God has connected the dots in your life to lead you to this very moment. And you don't know what's next, but you know that there's a reason why you are where you are specifically at the very moment. And so it helps alleviate any kind of fear, any kind of anxiety that the future could bring. Because it's always thinking too far out into the future, then it's easy to get anxious, which I wanted to get your perspective on that. What have you learned about anxiety from Stoicism?
Well, yeah, that many of the things that we fear will never really happen, right? And so it holds us back in the present moment, where nothing is to be feared, really. So it holds us back, and we cannot really live freely because there's a lot of fear. But we can know, that many of those fears will never come to happen, will never materialize. So that's one thing the Stoics say. And then, well, Stoic philosophy is really present oriented, because it's the only connection, to your actions where you have control. So the past is beyond your control, the future is beyond your control as well. And the Stoics say you want to focus on the things you can control, and this is always in the present moment. And well, for me, it's just coming back into the present moment. I mean, I've been there, that, as you said, thinking too much ahead, being with the thoughts somewhere in the future, that's when fear comes up with me as well. Things that might happen, or things that will probably be challenging, and so on. But whenever I'm present enough, I come back to the present moment, really, and pause, take a deep breath down into the belly. And I have a big trust in life, and I have a big trust in the presence of mind that I will be able to respond to any circumstance when it comes, right? Because that's your responsibility, right? Your ability to respond to the current situation. And this can only happen in the present moment, always. So I would say come back to the present moment. And yeah, you can also look at the things that you're afraid of and maybe really break them down and, ask what you can do right now that might take away some of the fears, or maybe practice some voluntary discomfort. That's what the Stoics did. So, for example, if I think, so some people are afraid of spiders, right? Many people, maybe it's even inborn. So when I think that I'd have to take a big spider on my hand, I'd be really sweating a lot. But when I think of the guy who has this pet spider, pet tarantula, and takes the tarantula out every day, he's really used to it and he won't be afraid at all. So I think certain things can be practiced. So by getting into these uncomfortable situations that we might be afraid of, we can learn that we can actually deal with it. So we can get into challenges do things in smaller portions that we're afraid of. So if you're afraid of speaking in front of a group, you might want to join, I don't know, some poetry class where you have to present some poetry in front of other people, or just ask your friends if you can read some text to them or something. So I always find a way in the present moment to deal with certain challenges, and if the challenge isn't really here, you want to focus on the things that you can do. So, yeah.
Yeah, voluntary exposure to what terrifies you transforms you. But it's always the first step that's the toughest. It's the scariest. It's the dragon you have to slay is so much more scary than what it actually is whenever you can build the willpower just to take that first step. Even in starting a podcast or any kind of business, it's always scary getting into it, putting yourself out there. But once you take the first step, then you can take the second and the third. And before you know it, your goal is at the top of the mountain and you're taking steps to move up, to move towards the top of the mountain. And it's not overnight success, but it's going to take a long time. But skill acquisition and overcoming fears and just keep progressing, keep moving forward. That's how you overcome any kind of fears that are holding you back.
And I'd add one thing here. It's that it's always easy in theory, right? But in practice, it's a whole other story. So I'm well aware of the fears that can be really present and pulling us down. But it's if we can be present with the fear, as I said, with sadness, really experiencing or feeling the sadness, and doing the same with the fear, really trying to feel the fear, I find this is something that can be valuable as well, because you're then really aware here in the present moment, and oftentimes the awareness itself will be enough to make the fear, in this example, become smaller and smaller, or less frightening at least, because you actually feel it. And when you go into it, I find that it can be an interesting experience for one, and for the other it can help diminish the fear, really. And then you will maybe know what to do next, because it comes from some other part of you. Yeah.
I wanted to touch on habits and creating new habits, because we talked earlier with anxiety, and I always thought for a long time that anxiety is an attack, but you can flip that to say anxiety is a habit that you keep putting yourself into by thinking too much about the future, about worrying, and you're going to continually do this if you aren't working to beat that. So how do we not let anxiety and these things become a habit? And on top of that, how do we create good habits using Stoicism?
Well, so your podcast called The Pursuit of Wisdom, or Pursuit of Knowledge, right?
Yes, pursuit of knowledge.
Okay, so, and philosophy, or a philosopher, is a lover of wisdom. So you want to learn about life. You want to learn about yourself. And I would say Stoicism here can be tremendously valuable when you start looking at yourself. So basically it's about getting to know yourself, really. So for example, using self-reflection, which we could speak about how to make it a habit, right? But using self-reflection will help you, for example, getting clear on your values. You know, what do I really want? What's important in my life? Who do I want to be? And who am I? And all these things, all these questions will help you get an understanding of who you are and who you want to be. And then maybe you want to look at, what you currently do, how you currently behave in certain situations that's not true to yourself, and then decide on smarter behaviors, or behaviors that are more true, or more, in accordance with your highest self. And then you will make ways to incorporate these behaviors. So for the Stoics, it's, for example, Marcus Aurelius, he wrote the Meditations, right? And that's basically journaling. And as far as I've read, he would often journal in the evening. And for me too, journaling in the evening is easiest, because in the evening you can always make some time for yourself. So it's good for certain habits like journaling or meditation or stretching or whatever you want to do. So because you will go to bed every night, so you can create this time as you want, and you can, for example, do journaling as Marcus Aurelius did with his Meditations. So you just start writing in the evenings, and I find this will make you more aware throughout the day, because you will write about your days, right? You will write about what happens, about how you behaved, what you said, and all these things. And over time, during the days, you will already be more aware in these moments, because that's somehow what happens thanks to journaling about your days. And with the awareness, it becomes easier to add certain behaviors or certain habits, for example. So change behavior. I find, again, we're here with awareness, but awareness is one thing that can really help you. And then, we can go into habits, like that you need a trigger or a cue and all these things, but they're not really from Stoic philosophy. So from the Stoics, I would say, really it's self-reflection that will help you become the man or woman you want to be. And habits is all about, the things you do daily, and the things you do daily is really, over time, over years, who you are, right? And so from the Stoics, I would take self-reflection here.
That self-reflection, definitely interesting, on top of awareness and finding the right balance. Those three, integrating that into your life to be able to propel yourself in whatever direction you want to go in. So let's say there's someone listening who this is their first time listening or watching something about Stoicism. What should they do if they want to, get immersed into this?
You mean if they want to learn about this philosophy, or what do you mean exactly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they want to, let's say, first time hearing about it, and they want to learn more, how they can, how can they learn about Marcus Aurelius? How can they change their life? How can they become more self-aware?
Well, personally, I'm a reader. I like reading books, but probably people who listen to the podcast prefer podcasts. So I'm sure they will find many podcasts in which they talk a lot about Stoic philosophy. But if you want to read books, I can recommend a few. I mean, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. It's maybe not the easiest read. And Letters from Seneca. So these are two Stoic philosophers. And there's also Enchiridion by Epictetus. That's a really small handbook. And more modern books, I'd recommend Little Book of Stoicism, obviously. And I like Donald Robertson's How to Think Like a Roman Emperor. I like this a lot. Or William Irvine's The Stoic Challenge. I think it's a fun little book that gives you a couple of practices or reframing practices that I find can be really helpful in the present moment.
And talk to me about the book you have written about Stoicism.
So the Little Book of Stoicism, my idea was to give a simple overview over this philosophy. And I came up with a visual presentation of Stoicism. It's called the Stoic Happiness Triangle. And at the center of the triangle you have eudaimonia, which is a Greek word standing for happiness. But it's really a weak translation, happiness. So it's more eu, meaning good in Greek, and daimon, your soul, basically. So good soul. You want to live in harmony with your soul. You want to live in harmony with your highest self. That's their goal. For me, it's flourishing, really. Flourishing life. Just like, flowering, if I was a flower. So that's the goal of life, which I find a beautiful goal, eudaimonia, or flourishing. And how do you get there? As I said, it's a virtue-based philosophy. So the first corner of the triangle would be living with arete. Arete is another Greek word, and it stands for virtue. But it's really just try to express your highest self, moment to moment to moment, really. In every moment, don't fall below your best self. Try to really be here and do and say the things that you could speak of with honor. And so that's the first corner. Then in the second corner we have the core principle of Stoic philosophy, which is that there are things that you can control and things you cannot control, and you want to focus on the things you can control. So that's the second corner, and it helps you express your highest self in every moment by focusing on what you can do, right? So it doesn't really matter to the Stoics what happens in the outside world, but only what you do given the circumstances. So focus on these things that are within your control. And ultimately, responsibility, or taking responsibility, is the third corner here, because the Stoics say you are responsible for your own happiness as well as unhappiness, because living with arete, expressing your highest self in every moment, is within your control, and it's enough if you want to flourish in life. So just expressing your highest self is enough. So you are responsible. So that's this Stoic happiness triangle from the book. And apart from this triangle, and well, I share a lot more about the theory of Stoicism and its ideas. And then the second part of the book, it's really 55 practices. So how can you apply Stoicism in daily life? Because one of the ancient Stoics, Musonius Rufus, he was really the guy who said you must practice, practice, practice. Otherwise, this philosophy, it's useless. You don't want to ace tests, right? You don't need to learn everything by heart. You must put it into action in everyday life. That's where the gold is, or can be found, really, if you apply what you learn. So it's good to pursue knowledge, but I'd say it's even more important to put it into action in everyday life, and I'm sure you're doing that. And I think that's for Stoicism that's really important to just to put what you learn into action and try for yourself. Take from the Stoics whatever you like, whatever resonates, and if it works, great. If not, or if you don't like it, try something else, and yeah, make it your own. Really, I would say with many philosophies, really to 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 test it for yourself and find out what works for you, and yeah, make it your own. Put it into everyday life, really.
Yes, it doesn't matter how much you learn, what you learn. It always comes back to take action and let these things change your life. Let them change your actions. And before you know it, you'll transcend into a whole different person. So what is next for you, and where can the listeners find you at?
So I'm currently working on my new book, and well, there's going to be a lot of Stoicism, or people who know Stoicism are going to find it, between the lines everywhere, the Stoic philosophy. But it's much more from me or from myself. This book, yeah, it's the goal is to flourish, and I will, try to give ways and tools to get there, basically. And it's going to be lots of practices as well. So I'm working on that currently, and people can find me at njlifehacks.com. It's my brother Neil's and my blog, but I haven't really been active so much there. But we write a weekly newsletter, so they can sign up if they want. Yeah, and I'm not on social media, so yeah, it's hard to find me there.
All right, great. Jonas, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you.